Oi oi, it's your boy, the Macy Chiasson of being 12th in line for the throne, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you on Monday the 11th of September. And we're talking about UFC 279, which in many ways was the 9/11 of UFC cards. Absolute disaster. There was some good stuff on it, obviously, because there's good stuff. If you lock 24 people in a cage, one versus one, you're going to get a good fight out of there somewhere. But there was an awful lot of weirdness surrounding this card. Weirdness that, we're going to talk about today, but no one really knows the truth of it. Because a lot of it is obfuscated by Ali Abdelaziz's favourite thing that real men do, behind-the-scenes deals. Yes, because obviously the main event when I dropped my boycast on Thursday, which I thought was very punctual, and I literally said to myself, there actually hasn't been a lot of cancellations for quite a while, because for a long time it was you'd put something out on Tuesday and it might be cancelled by Saturday when the fight came. And I was thinking that to myself, perhaps a little too hard, and I jinxed it. Because this was one of the most chaotic fight weeks since the dolly throwing incident. Possibly more chaotic if you consider the number of fights that they changed and the number of switch-ups they pulled for this one. When I recorded the boycast, the top three matches were Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz, Jingliang versus Tony Ferguson, and Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. About Friday, it comes out that Khamzat Chimaev is way overweight and not going to make it. And then people revealed that they'd run into him in a restaurant eating as much as he wanted. He came in, weighed in, did a shrug, and then obviously the double flex. You've got to do a double front bicep if you fail weight. It's the only thing to do. Justin Taffer did it as the only man to ever fail at heavyweight. Until this week, another strange fuck up of the entire week-long disaster. But Chimaev came in, I think it was 7 pounds over, which is extremely unprofessional. And then it came out that apparently a doctor had told him to stop cutting weight. Why it then was revealed so late and treated as a surprise, nobody knows. But then there was a lot of moving and shaking in the last 24 hours before the event to try and get as many of these fights to go ahead as possible, because they booked an incredibly weak pay-per-view card. I think they were getting to the position that I was, where they're going, nothing's been cancelled in a while, and just booking shit cards. No title, one fight on the entire thing, and I think it was on the prelims that had any consequences for the division, and mainly mismatches was what it was before the change-ups. But by Chimaev missing weight by a huge margin, they actually managed to get together a better card. Now, I was saying this on the boycast, but Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard know what they're doing. They were asked to put together a slaughter for Khamzat Chimaev. This was not like, we've accidentally made some shit fights. This was deliberate mismatches. But the last-minute switch-ups made better fights as a result, because he had prepared to go on this card Tony Ferguson, a better opponent for Nate Diaz with where he is at in his career, also preparing for a welterweight fight. And then you got Jingliang and Daniel Rodriguez to fight each other so that Kevin Holland could fight Khamzat. And they'd pre-made some drama by having a scuffle backstage that didn't even look real, to be honest. And Khamzat had also had a scuffle with Paulo Costa, but really only just mouthing off because the camera was on him and Paulo Costa didn't seem to give a shit. But to me, this event really sums up just how worthless every individual fighter is to the UFC. And how, until they get together and realise that, they're going to get the bum end of every deal. Now, Dana White said that none of these fighters who changed matches, 6 fighters had their fights changed at the last minute, had a change of opponent, and a few of them had a change of rounds too. So if you've been training for 3 and you get 5, or if you've been training for 5 and you get 3, that's a big change-up. But Dana White claimed that none of them got any more money, which is very clever, because Nate Diaz and Kevin Holland are going to claim that they did. And that's going to play into the UFC's advantage, because idiots will believe that the UFC just gives people extra money backstage and lies about it. But either way, you're going to have to pay someone a lot of money to make up for the fact that you are effectively bait and switching them. In a real world, and when we were going through that injury, what's the opposite of a drought? Monsoon? When we were going through that monsoon of injuries, they were paying a third fighter to stay ready or to get ready and weigh in for every important main event. But the outcome of this was bonkers because Nate Diaz ended up fighting Tony Ferguson in a 5-rounder when Tony had trained for 3. Li Jingliang ended up fighting Daniel Rodriguez, who was weighing in at 180 pounds, and Li Jingliang made 170, so 10-pound weight disadvantage. And then Khamzat got to fight Kevin Holland because he needed someone who can't wrestle. That was the rule. I mean, that's why they booked Diaz in the first place. At least he got his squash match. But in addition to that, you had weird shit going on with Huggy Bear, Chris Barnett, finished a fight, amped everyone up, gave a great post-fight speech, danced, did all the things that he's supposed to do as an entertainer. Then they sent him to the hospital and they left him there without transport. Good job, lads. And then Johnny Walker, before he even changed clothes, he was still in his fucking gloves, which seems like a shortcoming on the part of the commission, to be honest, but it left the arena in shorts, no shirt, gloves, and no shoes. He was just ushered out because they were saying, like, oh, we don't want fights going on backstage. Having cancelled the pre-fight presser because of the alleged fight between Kevin Holland and Khamzat Chimaev. And the real loser this week was Li Jingliang. First, he had to fight 10 pounds up, but also had a beautiful suit made that he was on embedded going, oh, I can't wait for everyone to see my suit. And then he was about to go out for the presser, and they cancelled the presser. It was so funny. But yes, should we start at the top? Main event, Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. Just sad, really. Really bad fight. Basically looked like really low-level MMA because they were both moving so slowly. Tony was trying to do the things that he always does, but is now too slow to do them. And Nate Diaz never looked comfortable enough to get into range and actually hit him. And we talked about Tony changing camps and going to Jackson Wink or whoever it was and actually trying to train at a proper camp. And we were saying that, especially with weirdos, stylistically, not personality-wise, going to a different camp can be difficult, or more difficult, because whoever you go to has the choice of either trying to let you do what you're doing without really being able to coach you in it, or trying to change you into something that you're not. And the example I always give is Prince Nazim. He fired Brendan Ingle because Brendan Ingle was getting, I think it was 5% as manager and 5% as trainer. So once Naz was getting 20 million a fight or whatever, Brendan Ingle was getting 4 million, and Naz's hangers-on said, why do you need him? But he ended up going to Emmanuel Stewart, who's a much more accomplished coach, produced a lot more world champions than Brendan Ingle. But Emmanuel Stewart had no idea what to do with his style because it was so weird. And I think you got a full display of that in this fight as the corner were repeatedly shouting to Tony, stop turning your back, when that's a huge part of what Tony does or did. And it was sort of throwing Nate off, but not enough because Tony's really slow now. The other part that really, when you're talking about how much Tony slowed down, one of the things I always think of is the step-up low kicks. And I did a big thing on it in A Filthy Casual's Guide to Tony Ferguson, which I think has been put on notorious Chinese streaming site Bilibili, which I do not endorse. But if you did want to watch it, you could watch it there. He does these big walk-ups into kicks, and he'll kick people like shin to shin, calf to calf, whatever. But he really runs up into them, and it looks weird because it is weird. You're not going to see that in high-level kickboxing or Muay Thai because the guy will react. But Tony was quite fast, and he was able to just do it. And if you watch this fight, Nate Diaz not good at checking kicks. So he stands in a stance that turns his shin away from the kick. So he's got to move ahead of time to react. And Tony immediately comes out, runs up and kicks him shin to shin by accident and splits his own shin open. And most of his low kicks weren't getting in as good as he wanted to because he does this big slow run-up. Whereas you watch someone like, I've just been watching Simon Marcus versus Alex Pereira, but Simon Marcus has one of the sickest left kicks you'll see, certainly in bigger men. Lovely left switch kick, barely any load-up time, and lovely left step-up kick, barely any load-up time. But Tony, it's like he might as well be scraping his foot on the floor before he does it like a bull. So that's where you really see the speed drop off. That and the back turns, he's just so slow now. When he did hammer a kick to the inside of the knee and he caught Nate Diaz opened his mouth as if to scream, and then tried to play it off like he was going, oh, and, giving him a mean mug. But it looked like it really hurt him. And that was the round that he was walking around the cage and resting against it. When Conor McGregor was trying to walk off and pretend he wasn't tired, and Nate Diaz was pointing at him and going, oh, this was that, but Nate Diaz was the tired one. Kind of like when Nick Diaz was fighting Robbie Lawler. But yeah, Tony, he was having so much trouble that the corner tried to do the sensible thing. They tried to treat Tony Ferguson like a normal MMA fighter, and were like, we need you to get a takedown. He shot a takedown right into a guillotine. The Nate Diaz guillotine, we talked about it on the Boycast, but it's really interesting because before there was this idea of double enclosure that John Danaher's always on about, which is that you catch the guillotine so that the front of your opponent's windpipe is in the V of your elbow, the crook of your elbow. So you've got your forearm coming up one side of the neck and your bicep side of your arm coming down the other. Whereas a classical guillotine is wrist or forearm across the windpipe, going straight across. And Nate Diaz has been strangling dudes with the full V guillotine for years, and he's been getting them one-handed sometimes, or close to one-handed. But what you saw here was he goes over the arm grip, which is a very hard guillotine to finish. He wraps the head, he falls back, and he puts his back to the mat and starts trying to pummel his hand in front of Tony's shoulder, which is how you change from an arm-in guillotine to an arm-out guillotine. And if you watch someone like Marcelo Garcia, doesn't ever attempt to finish arm-in guillotines, but will use them to then wrap the head and pummel his hand in for an arm-in guillotine. Sorry, for an arm-out guillotine. Just the throat being in there. It's a really nice choke. It happened. He finished it at 2:09 of round 4, or 2:09 remaining in round 4, which was very funny. But really, both these guys looked terrible. It was very low-level fighting done by guys who are very much in the twilight of their career. I mean, I thought that Tony was completely done since the Beneil Dariush fight, because Beneil Dariush is good, but he's not so good that Tony Ferguson shouldn't be able to do anything against him. And we had a chat last week, on the Boycast, about how I think people massively overrated the first round of Tony versus Chandler, because Tony hit him on one leg, and that sent Chandler stumbling backwards, and people were like, oh my God, Tony's on point, blah, blah, blah. He just caught him stepping up to kick, and then was able to use that momentum to sort of take the round, but also got taken down and put along the fence and couldn't really do anything while Chandler recovers, which is what Chandler always does. If you watch his fights with Brent Primus, Goto Yamauchi, whoever, when he gets bored or tired or hurt, he just takes people down along the fence and sits on them. So I'm always laughing at these people being like, Goto Yamauchi doesn't even need takedowns. He lets people take him down and then he submits him, because Michael Chandler took him down, put his head against the fence, and he couldn't do anything. But yeah, Tony has been done for a while, and he's now we were talking about how he's done the double switch up, because fighters, when they're like, something needs to change, they either do weight class or camp. And Tony's done both this time. And then at the end, after the fight, he said, I'm back. And you're going, what? I suppose he did win a round, but the man is convincing himself that he's still got it. And maybe he'll win one at some point if they lower the level of competition enough. But he's paid, compared to other fighters, he's still not paid what he's worth, and he was never paid what he's worth. But compared to other fighters, he's paid quite a large chunk of money. The UFC are not going to let him fight newcomers and things like that. They're going to keep him fighting against killers, and he's just declined so quickly that I doubt he's going to really do anything impressive. Meanwhile, Nate Diaz looked honestly worse than I expected. I thought he'd take this one easy, but he looked really confused by Tony. But then again, this is the last-minute change of opponents. Had he fought Khamzat Chimaev, he would have been smashed. I think we all know that. We all knew that before this fight was made. We're all saying, what a stupid fight. I hope they don't make that. That was the point of it. Khamzat has since, in the post-fight press conference, been like, I would have killed Nate if we fought. And there's people arguing that he wouldn't in the comments. You're like, no, we're all agreed he would kill Nate, I thought. I hope he makes a ton of money doing whatever he's doing next. Because while he was never as good as some people claimed him to be or made him out to be, he was very much disrespected by the UFC, and he was one of the few people who actually made some noise about it, and it meant that he lost like months and years of his career sitting on the sidelines while the UFC offered him fights that were really unfavourable or just not suited to where he was. There is no arguing that Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz is a good fight to make. We want to see people... Well, this is what I was saying on the Boycast, but I want to see people in decently matched fights where when something like a knockout or a submission happens, I go, oh, damn, he really got the better of him there. Or damn, he really worked him out there. Or damn, he really came back from the edge there. I don't care about seeing people who I know are going to lose to people who I know are going to win. This is the whole MVP thing again. Him knocking out Cyborg Santos was not impressive to me. Him knocking out that librarian with 3 fights was not impressive to me. If he'd knocked out Paul Daly, I'd be a bit more impressed. If he'd knocked out Douglas Lima, even though Douglas Lima does nothing anymore, I'd be more impressed. If he hadn't just lost a fight to Mike Perry, which I don't think I covered, because it was in a weird section of the Venn diagram where it was something I would love to talk about and laugh about, but also it happened in BKFC, which is the murder company. They book mismatches and then they're surprised when they kill someone. It's even better because they got this Twitter intern who talks smack to other promotions on Twitter, or just says like, well, if both fighters are being boring, they should be disqualified and docked their pay or whatever. Like, you literally murdered someone. Shut the fuck up. Then the other half of the former main event, Khamzat Chimaev co-main evented against Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland came out for the glove touch. Khamzat just dived on the takedown immediately. There were some nice scrambles because Kevin Holland was Granbying. And the thing about the Granby that you'll notice in fights is that it tends to work the first 1 or 2 times you do it, and then the opponent starts to sort of ride your momentum and hold you down more. This was the same with, was it Abel Trujillo against Habib Nurmagomedov? Habib Nurmagomedov. Habib kept mat returning him, and the first 2 times that he tried this Granby, he escaped and got back to his feet. And then the third time, it just went off like a fart in church, and Habib held him down again. Another guy who's really good at this is Diego Ferreira, loves his Granbys. But yeah, it's a big explosive move that works best when it catches guys by surprise. Eventually, Holland got held down. Front headlock. I think Khamzat looked for a guillotine, and he came back up onto his knees for the front headlock, and then he broke him down to the Darce with the Darce grip, punched through the bicep. And Kevin Holland did an all right job of keeping his hips away, which is what you want to do on Darces, and also guillotine most of the time. Yeah, there are exceptions to that, but like the Leo Nogueira guillotine. But if you keep the guy's hips away from your hips, you can make his life a lot harder squeezing you. So a lot of times people put both hands on the hips and push away. Holland actually put his knee in between him and Khamzat and sort of pushed it down to the floor. But he managed to sort of like free space for himself, but ended up turning it back into the front headlock in a position where Khamzat could just recycle the position and lock his hands deeper. Yeah, it looked like he tweaked his shoulder doing it too, because that's one of the interesting things about the Darce. It comes off the overhook a lot of the time, but it can be quite hard on your shoulder, especially if you are trying to get your shoulder away from your neck and maybe punch an underhook or do something to keep that arm out away from your neck, because it's the arm that's the shoulder, like the ball of the shoulder is being pushed into the side of the neck, and that's what creates the choke with the opponent's arm wrapping your neck on the other side. Double enclosure, as Danaher always says. But yeah, when he got up and walked off, his shoulder looked like it was jacked up too. I mean, it was really nice sequence from Khamzat Chimaev. Great wrestling, great takedowns, great top control, really lovely pursuit of a submission. People are complaining about the fake glove touch. In fairness to Khamzat, he did not show a glove touch. I think that's on Kevin Holland not giving it any thought, because if you've watched any Khamzat Chimaev fights, probably about 70-80% of them, he hits a takedown in the first 5 seconds of the fight. Often by just throwing a high kick and then the opponent comes back at him and he ducks on their legs. He's done that loads. Him and Jailton Almeida have probably about 6 or 7 wins between them just off that takedown. Because once you're on top, obviously, if you're a great top player, very hard for the guy to get up. And Khamzat Chimaev is very much a momentum fighter. The earlier he gets the takedown, the easier it is for him to break his opponent and to get the finish. But yeah, whenever you're fighting someone like that who's just going to bum rush you and try and get you down off the early going, take half the round off. Just let them run at you. This is what we're always saying. We've been saying it since Ronda Rousey. Now, obviously, anytime I say that, people go, this isn't Ronda Rousey. This is some kind of new fighter or whatever. No, I'm just saying, don't give them an easy clinch off the bat. Make them do some degree of work rather than catching you dead to rights in the opening seconds when you're completely dry and you don't have any chance of slipping out of things or pummeling your underhooks easier or anything like that. But yeah, good win for him. Was a total dick on the mic. definitely erring on the side that he's slightly dense. A bit stupid, but he does speak 2 languages and I don't, so fair play to him. Yeah, it's been a weird week for him because he's basically done a full heel turn, but if it sells fights, it sells fights. Crazy to have a dude shout, "I'll kill all of you, Allah Akbar," what is it, Allahu Akbar, in Las Vegas to an American crowd on the day before 9/11. just bonkers. Shout out to whoever pointed that out in a tweet. I can't remember who it was, but I once you think about it, you go, damn, yeah, we've come a long way in 20 years. And they booed the Queen, that crowd, but that's dope, so I'll let that stand. So the rest of this card, what was actually good? Jingliang versus Daniel Rodriguez fucking sucked. Neither of them did very much. Jingliang obviously giving up 10 pounds, but at least he was throwing. I mean, he's going into more of a counterboxing style. I found him more interesting when he was sort of pressuring guys. Who's that guy he sidekicked that I'm always hype about? That was a really what I think of when I think of a Jingliang performance. But in recent years, he's been sort of more on the counter. Every time Rodriguez came in, he was trying to swing a left hook over the top and come back with the right hand against the southpaw, trying to sideswipe him with the left hook, basically, and line up the right straight. Threw the odd wide right to the body, too, which was nice. But Daniel Rodriguez only jabbed. I know this guy's got a great left kick and a good left straight, but he only threw jabs in this fight. And he missed, 50, 60, 70% of them. And, it was just bizarre because the commentators seemed to think that he had this laser-accurate jab. And it just wasn't. Jingliang landed less blows, but not significantly less, and all of his blows were big swings. And Rodriguez was just poking with a jab that didn't really do much and was missing most of the time. So it was very frustrating, and obviously, whenever I think of a big weight disadvantage, I'm going Ryzen and Pride, if you were the significantly smaller man and it went to the decision, you'd win or whatever. I think that was the Super Hulk tournament rules in Ryzen. No, what was the Super Hulk tournament? Dream. It was if you were 40 pounds lighter or 30 pounds lighter or whatever it was, firstly, you could opt in or out of head kicks and knees on the ground, which I thought was nice. And secondly, if it went to the decision, you'd get extra points from the judges or whatever. But yeah, sad for Jingliang. Hope he got paid more at least. Daniel Rodriguez, gets his win bonus and he can go and spend it on more terrible tattoos. He's got 1986 on his chest. And I'm going, that's the year you were born. Unless something maybe his dad died that year or something like that. But having the year of your birth tattooed on your chest seems like you went into a tattoo parlor knowing you wanted a tattoo and where you wanted it, but you didn't actually have anything to say. It's fuck it, put on my date of birth. I'd have 1984 done and then just point to it and go, it's literally 1984 whenever anyone says anything. Irene Aldana bounced. Did she bounce back from the Holly Holm loss? Has she fought since then? When Holly Holm pieced her up? Oh yeah, she beat Kuniskaya. She fought Macy Chiasson. The first round was really boring and I was going, oh, this is going to be shit. But then it actually picked up a bit. Macy Chiasson's takedowns were pretty decent. She was getting elbow deep on her double legs, which we always like. Irene Aldana, there was a beautiful one where they bounced off the cage, basically. Chiasson went in on the double and they bounced off the cage. And Aldana stepped over the overhook into an arm bar. And it looked damn near like she broke Chiasson's arm. I mean, clearly she didn't because Chiasson kept fighting for another round. But it was really nice. Those step over overhook arm bars are lush. There was a judoka used to do it from in the guard with an overhook. He'd just throw his leg all the way over your head. Was it Komura? Not Kimura with an I, Komura. Very cool. You'll see it from time to time. Some guys play the pendulum sweep with the overhook now and they'll go straight through to that. But obviously, Ronda Rousey very famously did it against Kat Zingano. Stepped over her back as she was trying to takedown attempt. And Dustin Hazlett, my boy. Dustin Hazelnut. Fucking love that guy. If you don't... We're at the point, actually, where it's so long ago now that most of my listeners probably don't know who the fuck Dustin Hazlett is. Go look him up. Really old school, middle era UFC submission artist. Just had some really nice submissions on his record. And one of them was stepping over the overhook while the guy was attempting a takedown armbar. But the finish to this... Oh, actually, there was a really interesting moment where Chiasson dragged her down and almost got on her back. But it was a weird situation that sort of happens a lot in grappling where the wrong leg is through in a hook. So instead of having the leg on the outside hooked in. She had one leg poking up between Aldana's legs and up over her hip, and Aldana was attacking like a heel hook attempt on it. And you can get, who was it? Ikehisa Minowa. He fought some absolute bum in, again, Dream. They just put him in against some lad who had no idea what he's doing. And Ikehisa Minowa got to that position with like an Achilles lock grip, a straight foot lock grip, whatever you want to call it. And he rather than focusing on the foot, he just turned the guy's leg at the hip. They called it like a lateral knee bar, but it was basically like a hip lock. He just bust this dude's leg wide open for no reason. It was fucking gross. You know, did not wait for a tap, just went bang straight through on it. So you had this situation where Chiasson was trying to get that leg out and put the proper hook in, and Aldana was trying to keep that leg in because if she let it go, Chiasson might get on her back. Chiasson did eventually get on her back there. But the finish was absolutely crazy. Aldana was just sort of spazzing with her legs from the bottom and kicked her in the liver with her heel. And I saw some people going like, she must have practiced that. You go, no, up kicks are so fucking dangerous and powerful. You know, I'm always advocating more of them. You know, Ben Saunders is a guy who I thought was great at this. If you watch his Bellator fights and some of his UFC fights, actually, he would, because when the guy's on his knees in your guard, you can't kick him in the head. But Ben Saunders would axe kick the guy in the clavicle, or he'd straight kick him in the chest. And those can really take the wind out of you. You know, if you saw Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat, one of the ways that he got up from underneath him was he just kicked him in the chest. You forget how powerful your legs are. I mean, go to a gym, even if you're completely untrained, the thing that you can pack the plates on with and actually really impress yourself is the leg press. It's such a powerful motion. I vividly remember as a child, like we're talking 3 or 4 probably, my mum trying to tickle my feet and I kicked her in the face, like almost broke her nose. And I was a 3-year-old child. You know, that's how fucking powerful your legs are when you're kicking upwards. I should stress, just peddling my legs because I didn't want my feet to be tickled, not because I was trying to kick my mum in the face. But Chiasson went down like she'd been kicked in the liver, but everyone was looking at it going, what the fuck happened? I was looking at it going, what the fuck happened? And they stopped the fight, and Aldana definitely, even though Herzog did the wave off thing, Aldana did not look like she knew what was happening. She looked like she was waiting to see if it was a groin strike or something. But honestly, pretty good fight up till that point. One of the better ones on the card. Which probably says more about the card, to be honest. But Johnny Walker, yeah, he got a good submission. Ion Cutelaba took him down early. And Ion Cutelaba has very good ground and pound. You know, he's been smashing people from the top for quite a while. I mean, just look at Devin Clark, got battered. And Johnny Walker actually did a decent job holding him in guard and not really letting him do anything. He was using some grapevines, pulling his feet out and so on, and just pulling his head down, breaking his posture. Worked really well for him. Then when the time was right, he hit a little scramble up to his feet, got behind Cutelaba, dumped him on the floor, got on his back and choked him. It was over. Well, actually, it was 4 minutes 30, but it felt like it was a very short fight. And honestly, quite encouraging from Johnny Walker, because he's got fantastic physical gifts, which was what we were all super impressed by when he was spazzing out and knocking people out in 50 seconds or whatever. But if he can grapple well and he can use it to his game plan, that'd be very impressive. I mean, Ion Cutelaba, like I said, he's pretty dangerous from top position. He's beaten up some good guys. Not Devin Clark, obviously, but well, actually, I was going to say Jared Cannonier, but Jared Cannonier used to have no understanding of grappling at all. If you touched his legs, you won the fight. And I think Cannonier beat him as well, which is probably not a great example either. But yeah, good for Johnny Walker. And then they kicked him out of the arena. He got back to his hotel in bare feet with no shirt on. It was very funny. Kavanagh was reporting that. God knows what was going on. You know, and they're going to say like it was an oversight or something like that, but they treat their athletes like shit. The one I was excited for was Julian Erosa versus Hakeem Dawodu. I said that this was probably the best matchup on the card because this is 2 guys similar level, both pretty high level, doing well at the moment. You know, looking to move forward. Whereas this card was mainly, as it was booked, it was mainly squash matches. I think the best matchup you got out of it was maybe Daniel Rodriguez versus Jingliang, and even then there was a bit of a sketchiness to that too because Daniel Rodriguez came in 10 pounds heavier, not having to cut weight, and Jingliang did cut weight. But yeah, Erosa versus Dawodu I was excited for. What we were saying on the boycast was Hakeem Dawodu, you can find like nerds in the nerd space like me. But you know, there's the sort of posting cool gifs of fights on Twitter people. they'll find loads of clips of Hakeem Dawodu pulling away, withdrawing his leg from low kicks and returning with a low kick of his own or whatever, or pulling his head back from high kicks and coming back with a low kick. He's got loads of lovely little clips of textbook Muay Thai in the UFC. But he also wins split decisions and loses split decisions because he doesn't do an awful lot. He does one or two really cool, clean things around. And I was saying Erosa's been doing really well driving up the pace on people and overwhelming them. So the playoff in this fight was, does he get in Dawodu's face and overwhelm him? Or does he get knocked out in the process? It's a case of, is he feeding Dawodu power strikes that Dawodu won't set up on his own because he's just too lazy and lackadaisical? Or is it that Dawodu can't work at a higher pace and Julian Erosa is going to expose that? And Dawodu didn't really get tired, but he does have no urgency at all. He was losing 2 rounds and he still wouldn't do anything. The Hakeem Dawodu do something significant challenge is literally impossible. Because Erosa dropped him in the first round with a lovely, was it a right hand? And he did a great job in the first round because you saw him get into that sort of, I'll just throw out a low kick. I've missed and he's kicked me in the leg. If you just play that sort of point-scoring game at point-scoring range with Dawodu, he's going to have a good time. So what Julian Erosa did was he got closer on top of Dawodu and he threw his big, long arms at him and boxed him up a bit in that first round. And also grabbing the head and hitting collar tie uppercuts, which, again, this is one of the big differences between, like, I hate mentioning BKFC and I hate doing it twice on the same podcast. But if you notice in bare-knuckle boxing, as it is now, they are allowing a lot of holding and hitting. And any time that a boxer, like an amateur boxer or whatever, fights an MMA fighter who's not very good, one of the big difference makers is grabbing the collar tie and hammering in uppercuts. Because any slick footwork, slick head movement that you've got doesn't work when someone's holding on to you. It's one of the very basic level instincts of humans in fights is anchor yourself and start swinging. Because if you grab someone's collar or whatever, as in their actual collar, not like collar tie, we're talking about a street fight here, but if you just grab someone's collar, you know that their head's just above that, and you can start swinging away without even looking, hockey punching. And it's the same thing with the collar tie. If you get close enough to collar tie someone, you can hammer in uppercuts, and they'll probably hammer them back, but at least you're hitting them. And the great example I always give is Dustin Poirier versus Joe Duffy. Joe Duffy made Dustin Poirier look like an absolute fool on the feet because Dustin Poirier just kept shifting at him and Joe Duffy would fall back and then hit him on the counter. And then what happened was that Dustin Poirier would take a good shot, grab a hold of a collar tie, and land 3 or 4 great uppercuts to the head, where Joe Duffy couldn't slick his way out. And Erosa did some damage with that here. There was someone else on the card who did some great work with elbows. Oh, it was Tululin. Dennis Tululin did great work with a collar tie and elbows in his fight. But second fight, Julian Erosa hits a takedown, gets the back on the way up, and he got the back on the feet and jumped on the back, and then Dawodu leaned forward, and Erosa came forward with him, and then Dawodu came back up to upright, and Erosa just leaned back, and then he fell on his back. So it was a whole round basically fighting the hands. And then third round, Dawodu did nothing. Never, that was the moment. He was 2 in the hole against, he fought Evloev, who's also a very good fighter, but like one of the best opponents of his career in the UFC, could not do it. Couldn't bring it out of himself. Does not have that dog in him. They x-rayed him. There is no dog in him. Which is really sad, because Hakeem Dawodu, as much as his name is mean, but he does not come across mean at all. They should call him Clean Hakeem, because he just wants a nice fight where he's left alone. Meanwhile, Juicy J, what a career turnaround, because he's, it's easy to miss the fact that he's actually on his second stint in the UFC. He got in off the Contender Series the first time in 2018. I think that was the first Contender Series. And he fought Devontae Smith, Grant Dawson, and Julio Ars. Devontae Smith knocked him out in the first round. Julio Ars knocked him out in the first round. So 3 losses, 2 first-round knockout losses. You would not think that person was going to come back and impress you. But he stepped in for, I can't remember who it was, it dropped out against Sean Woodson. And he darsed him in the third round after having to get through the only guy in the division longer and taller than him. He knocked out Nate Landwehr in the first round. He did get knocked out by Sungwoo Choi, but now he's on a 3-fight streak of Charles Jourdain, who he finished, Steven Peterson, and Hakeem Dawodu. So he's looking really good on this second run in the UFC. Now, do I think he's going to be featherweight champion? Probably not. But he seems to have found something. I don't know if his weight cut's better, if he's floating around closer to the weight or whatever, because that would be something you suspect affect the chin. Could be that he's just found with this more aggressive, in-your-face style, he's managing to prevent himself from getting chinned by putting pressure on people and making them panic. He also beat Paddy Pimblett back in the day, and they robbed him on the scorecards, Cage Warriors. So, yeah, he's beat some good people. Oh, hold up. It's actually his third stint in the UFC, because way back in 2016, he fought Teruto Ishihara and lost. Fuck me. How many people get 3 stints in the UFC and impress on their third? What a crazy story. And that stuff's just hidden in the middle of this card. What else was good? Jailton Almeida got a very easy win. Another high kick, drop on the legs. It wasn't immediate this time, though, because normally he does a front kick to the face and then dives for the double leg. But he threw a high kick and then waited a little while, and when the guy threw some punches, he ducked in on his hips, took him down. Really just one-way traffic, did his passes, got to the back, got the choke. I like Almeida a lot. He's good fun. This was a catchweight fight at 220. I presume because there was a cancellation or whatever, and he was going for light heavyweight. He's been talking about doing both. I would honestly, like, if you can compete at heavyweight, great. But I always feel like if you can possibly make the cut to light heavyweight without destroying your cardio or destroying your ability to take a shot, there's less, you're going to have a less hard time fighting people who are your own size if you're decent than if you go up against people who are like twice your size. Because some of these heavyweights, there is no way they'd make light heavyweight. And going up against them doesn't matter how much mass Almeida can pack on. He's not going to be a 250, 260-pound man. He's going to be, a guy who would be 220 lean and could get down to 205 on a weight cut with maybe 20 pounds of fat on him, so he's 240. Actually, I say that, but then Linton Vassell was 205, and he was like the biggest man in that division, and he went up to heavyweight, and he's actually doing great there. And he's only gotten bigger, and it's not really fat. It's all, I'm sure, completely natural muscle. I love Linton Vassell, the king of Milton Keynes. The Milton Keynes concrete cow, if you will. Really niche Britain joke there for the American listeners, the 95% American listeners of my podcast. What else was good? Dennis Tulilin versus Jamie Pickett was quite fun. I was watching the first round going, well, Tulilin wants a brawl, Pickett wants a clean fight. Tulilin's not really cutting the cage very well. And then it looked like sometimes people will not try their hardest to cut the cage just to make the other guy move. Because if you're running around the ring, you're going to tire yourself out a bit more maybe than if I can land a couple of good body shots while cutting you off and getting punched in the face at the same time. Because in the second round, he looked much better at making the fight happen along the cage when he wanted it to. He was using the round kick to the body every time to try and get to start his mauling, sort of brawling exchanges. And you could hear Pickett's corner shout, no, go the other way, always away from the kick. He's going to kick you if you go that way. And that's what was happening. Lovely work with the collar tie, got into swinging exchanges, grabbed the collar tie, started hammering in elbows. It's one of those things, it's kind of like Ricky Hatton, when they were asking him about his favourite technique, he showed an overhook uppercut, hold the overhook, put your head against their head and hit him with the uppercut. And he said it was one of Roberto Duran's favourites, and he learned it from him. And he said it's not super scientific, but if they don't do something about it, you don't have to change the punch. You just keep throwing the same one until they do something about it. And that's what it was with these elbows here. In stadium Muay Thai, you're not going to see someone grab one collar tie and throw 5, 6, 7 elbows off the same side unless the other guy's already really hurt. Because they're going to pick up a forearm or they're going to grab the guy and pull him in or whatever. But here, Pickett just froze up when he grabbed the collar tie and started elbowing him. I think it was a knee that knocked him down in this one, and then he finished him on the ground. But yeah, good performance from Tulilin. Not a super technical guy, but knows what he's good at, knows his bread and butter, and did it against a guy who was trying his hardest to stop him. So well done to him. Chris Barnett versus Jake Collier. I mean, I said this in the pre-fight. I think I say this every time Jake Collier fights, but he's got some cool tricks. He's just fighting at such a huge disadvantage because he's doing the Roy Nelson thing, but he's not as naturally strong and powerful as Roy Nelson. He's not knocking these guys out most of the time. He has some cool tricks, and he actually has Tricky tattooed across his back now. But he's carrying so much extra fat. He's saying in interviews that he'd be 300 pounds if he wasn't training for fights. You're going, Jesus Christ, get this guy an intervention. Because he was a decent middleweight. He'd be a decent light heavyweight. I don't think it was the size thing that cost him in this fight, because Chris Barnett is also quite a chunky dude. But I really think Jake Collier should not be fighting at this weight. But he did well, trying to overwhelm Chris Barnett early. Got tired, and then second round was just all Chris Barnett doing the Superman jab to low kick, which was awesome. Last time he did it, they were going like, but it doesn't really do any damage, and you're going, that's all that Valentina Shevchenko did against Amanda Nunes in their second fight. Just Superman punch at the air and then run up into a slapping low kick where you just catch the guy with the end of your toes. But Chris Barnett got the stoppage. He was so tired that he tried to do his front flip into sitting position, and he like fell over. Which was actually Johnny Walker, sorry. He went to do his breakdance and he scuffed his leg on the first little hop over thing, and he just went, not going to do it. Just stood up, stopped. It's like doing a spinneroonie and failing. You just, even if you're GSP, you look really lame. And everything else, Alatengeli, I think is how he was saying it. Did decently against Chad Anheliger. Fairly repetitive fight. Not a lot happened. Anheliger would step in, and Alatengeli would occasionally catch him with a good counterpunch, or hit a takedown, which he couldn't really hold on to, but got the points on the board. Elise Reed versus Melissa Martinez was okay. Liness versus Weeks was bad, and they gave the decision to the wrong guy. And Norma Dumont fought a 1-0 fighter, Danielle Wolf, who I think was a decent amateur boxer or something like that. But she won her fight on the Contender Series 2 years ago, and they decided to bring her in because there are no women's featherweights. And Norma Dumont is fairly decent. And I like Norma Dumont because the girl's got an ass like I've never seen, which is a Laura Sanko-approved thought. If she says it, then it's not sexist. But Norma Dumont, I have mixed feelings about her fights because she can do cool things, but she has a real tendency to mean mug after like landing a 1-2 and then not do anything for the rest of the round. She's a real Hakeem Dawodu, if you will. But this one, she actually did a decent job. She was landing trips, she was landing good punches. She knocked down the last twice in the one realm of the fight where Danielle Wolf was supposed to have an advantage. Dumont's boxing isn't bad. I mean, I was saying like when Pennington beat Nunes, I was saying that Norma Dumont would have beat her on the same night, and I wasn't entirely joking. She's a bit samey, it is just fade back and throw the 1-2. She just slides back, lets the opponent fall short, and because everyone in this division swings and then drops their face in afterwards, she does pretty decently with it. But there's a great clip that I shared of, I think it was her versus, I think it was Macy Chiasson, where she came out of the clinch swinging, and she missed 4 punches in a row, and then moved away wagging her finger like she'd done something awesome. You're just going, cut down on the mean mugging, throw some kicks because you're built like a bad mamma jammer, and maybe you'll have some success. And it was so funny listening to Anik just trying to run interference for the UFC. He's going, well, she's got to look impressive because you won't get a shot at Amanda Nunes for that women's featherweight title unless you look impressive. You're going, no, you'll get it when it's your turn. That's the rule with women's featherweight. But I think she's on the last fight of her contract, and that's why they did Danielle Wolf, who's 1-0. I think the idea is that they're just going to cut her loose so she can't make bantamweight. But you never know, because it's always looking like they're going to cut off the featherweight division. Like when they dropped Megan Anderson. You're going, well, what have they got at featherweight now? There's no one who needs to be there. But then they just keep it around with like 2 fighters in it. Anyway, that was the card that was. It was pretty bad all round, to be honest. If you paid $80 for this, I'm not going to judge you for what you choose to spend your money on, but that's mental. I got it for, whatever I pay for BT Sport, which is great, by the way. And even I was going, just not a great card altogether. Next week, we've actually got something pretty good. We've got Sandhagen versus Song Yudong, which means lots of puns about Yudong, and also actually a pretty good matchup. And I think there's some other good stuff on that card too, which I haven't got open in a window here. But we're going to be talking about that. I'm recording this on Sunday so that I can finish Alex Pereira Advanced Striking 2.0 tomorrow. Hopefully have that up for the boys. It's been it's been a lot of work, mainly because I kept moving things around. But I think it's come out quite well, and I hope you'll enjoy it. If you are a Patreon boy, if you're not, consider signing up to the Patreon. There's never been a better time. The pound is so weak right now because it was actually tied to the Queen's heartbeat. Anyway, if you want to support the podcast, sign up to Patreon. If you want to read what I'm writing anytime, fightprimer.com. And if you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. I am your boy, Jack Slack. Screaming there's a new welterweight in town after edging a decision that you really deserve to lose. Bless.